Welcome to the Healing Spirits Here and There podcast with Terry and Amanda, where you'll hear spiritual perspectives, weird mediumship experiences, and try intuitive and trust-building exercises for yourself. Join us every Friday. Like and subscribe to never miss a show, and let's get started. Welcome to the Healing Spirits Here and There podcast. I'm Amanda.
And I'm Terry. Today, we're pretty excited. We have a guest speaker. It's a longtime friend of mine. Her name is Lynn Moddejonge. She owns Moddejonge's Herbals, and we are going to talk about herbs that help us with depression, sadness, anxiety. These are natural remedies to help us, not pharmaceutical, right?
Yeah, and none of us claim to be doctors. We're not counselors. We're just people who are trying to do some things natural, and kind of get back to empowering ourselves through herbs and plants and things that we have access to. So let's get Lynn on and welcome her.
Welcome, Lynn.
Hi.
I'm gonna make you big. Oops. Let's put you. There we go.
There I am.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us. We're really excited.
Thank you. I'm excited to do this as well. I want to tell you a little bit about me first, and then so you know where I'm coming from. I am a folk herbalist, which means I've done primarily self-study. I have been working with herbs for about 45 years, and I have 4 children, 7 grandchildren, and 2 great-grandchildren who are all recipients of my herbal medicine. I started out as a person that went to street fairs and farmers markets, and then I decided that I was getting too old to do that. And instead, I now have a brick and mortar store where I only set things up once instead of, every day. It is, and that has done wonders for my knees and my shoulders, not overworking them like I was before. Depression and anxiety oftentimes comes from your adrenal glands. Mm-hmm. Now, with the last 4 years that we've had, looking at COVID and how the reaction to COVID was, concerns about income because we were working or we weren't working, all of those things affected your adrenal glands and put most of us in a state of adrenal fatigue. That the adrenal glands are what sends the adrenaline through your body. So when you are depressed or when you're anxious, the adrenaline moves different levels. And pretty soon, when the adrenals get tired because they're doing it so much, then you start exhibiting a lot more symptoms of anxiety or depression or sadness. And there are a lot of ways to deal with that. There are some physical ways: get out, do exercise, walk around, don't isolate. Those things will help you move out of that depression, depending upon how severe it is. Now, herbs are absolutely great, but what you have to keep in mind is that it really still is medicine. And so you can have adverse reactions to them. You can be allergic to it. It is, I've got a granddaughter that is allergic to dandelions. So she's 20 years old now, but when she was 2 and 3 and out in the yard, she wanted to pick the pretty flowers, and it ended up causing her some contact dermatitis. And it is, so when you start with herbs, pay attention and, look inside your body and look outside your body and make sure that it's not affecting you in an adverse way. If you are taking medicines, these are the disclaimers that I'm kind of giving you right now is,
All about
pay attention.
Yeah.
It's natural, but that doesn't mean you're not going to have a reaction. If you are taking pharmaceutical meds, there are some herbs that will react poorly with them. So one of the most well-known antidepressants for herbs is St. John's wort. And St. John's wort works amazingly, but it reacts with medicines, because what St. John's wort does, as well as helping you control your depression, it cycles medicine through your body faster. So if you are taking anything that has to stay at a certain level in your body, like insulin or blood pressure meds or any heart medicine at all, birth control, it is going to cycle those medicines through your body faster. And so in terms of birth control, you're not on birth control anymore. And it is, and if you think you're safe, you're not. If you are taking blood thinners, the blood thinner isn't working as well because it's going out of your body faster. And so consequently, your blood is thickening up. So even though they're natural, there's still consequences, and you still have to make sure that you're paying attention to them.
Yeah.
It is.
That's incredibly helpful.
You know, we talk about anytime somebody comes into the shop here and says, I want some St. John's wort, my immediate response is, well, we have to have the conversation.
Yeah.
And I had somebody in just yesterday that was new into the shop. And she says, she cut me off and she says, I know all about it. And I said, okay. And then she's thought about it. She says, you know what? Maybe you better tell me, because I think I know about it, but I don't know that I know what you know. And we talked about it, and she said, well, I knew you weren't supposed to take St. John's wort if you're on a pharmaceutical antidepressant. I said, but I didn't know about the other things.
Gotcha.
And it was, so you have to be responsible in your use.
Yeah.
Otherwise you could, get into trouble with it. And I would encourage you, if you're going to start taking something on a full-time basis, if you are already seeing a doctor for that, I would definitely let the doctor know, this is what I'm going to try. And if it's a good doctor, they'll tell you, either I don't know about the herbs, maybe I'll look into it for you, or they will have some knowledge already. And it is, and if they don't want you to do it, they'll tell you, no, don't do it, and then ask them the reason why. And it is just so that you are taking care of your body in the best way that you can.
Yeah.
It is other herbs that are, besides St. John's wort, going back to your adrenal glands. There are Ayurvedic herbs that are from India. And the most common one being ashwagandha. And what that does is it works on your adrenal glands, which makes them healthier. It's kind of like a factory reset for your adrenal glands, so that you aren't suffering so much from adrenal fatigue anymore. And that brings a lot of those things down, the symptoms down. There are a lot of different adaptogens. That's what the class is called of herbs, is an adaptogen. And it is one of the things that I found is that ashwagandha has the best marketing team. And so everybody has heard, or a great many people have heard of ashwagandha. When they come in here, we do muscle testing on
cool.
herbs with people. It's applied kinesiology is what it's called, but muscle testing is easier to remember. And what I have found is that while astragalus works really well for some people, it doesn't work at all for others. And so I have several ones here. The second one that I sell the most of is astragalus. They both come from India. They look very similar, but they're two different plants. And I've had people, when they come in, they say, I want astragalus. And I said, you want to test that? And they'll say, okay. And they'll end up testing better for the astragalus. And what happens at that point is they come back in a week or 2 weeks and said, wow, these work so much better.
Wow. That's awesome.
It is, so there's things that, fail safes in there as well. But other adaptogens are brahmi, holy basil, echinacea. These are all, so I mean, just like antidepressants, there's a great number of them that, if you're not getting the response that you think you should be getting, do a little bit of experimenting and trying a different one.
Yeah.
In terms of anxiety, again, an adaptogen will help with that anxiety. Other things that help with anxiety are skullcap. I think that's like the number one. It's a combination. It's one herb, but what it does is it works both on anxiety and on muscle tension. It's a muscle relaxer, because what you do, and you may not have put this together, but generally what happens is as you get anxious, you start tensing your muscles. And then all of a sudden your shoulders are up to your ears and you're just tense. And that makes you, being that tense makes you more anxious, and they build on each other. And so the skull cap, what it will do is actually relax your muscles, and it will also bring down the anxiety. It is what I tell people, you can take up to 8 capsules a day, but not at a time. So I tell people, take one, give it 15 minutes, and then check in with your body. How am I feeling? And if you're coming down and everything's cool, then you stop at 1. If you're not, you can take a second one. And because sometimes you let it go too long and it's got a better seed in your body, and you would need 2. After you've done this a while, if this is a complaint that you have regularly, anxiety, you'll know. I see how anxious I am. I know I caught it at the very beginning, and so I only need 1. Or whoops, I was not at home. I couldn't get my skull cap. Now I'm home. It's going to take 2 because I'm stronger into anxiety. It is chamomile, lavender. All of those will also bring down lower levels of anxiety. You can use some of these in as essential oils, put them on the bottom of your feet. Don't ingest them because they're not good for your body. Internally, for your digestive system, it will get, essential oils are 70 times stronger than the actual plant. And that is way too strong for our liver to handle. And so if you do it on a long-term basis, you're going to end up with liver damage. But if you put it on the bottom of your feet, at the arch where you don't have any calluses, it goes through your nervous system instead. And one of the fun things for me is that if you put an essential oil on the bottom of your feet, within a minute or 2, you'll taste it on your tongue.
I've heard that before.
It works, and it absolutely does. It is
cool.
So yeah, that is pretty strange. Little known fact is when Vicks Vapor Rub came out, our grandmothers put it on the bottom of our feet.
Aren't the pores on your feet like way bigger than anywhere on your body? And that's one of the reasons too.
That's one of the reasons.
Wow, look at that.
And it's connected all the way through. So that's pretty good. It is, you can just breathe it in, if you're using the essential oils. You can make a tea out of it. If you're making a tea for medicine, you need to know you have to steep it for 20 minutes. Otherwise, you're getting the taste, but you're not getting the medicine.
In the herb or in the oil? In the
I'm
herb,
sorry?
right? In the herb, right?
Yeah. If you make the tea out of the
Tea out
herb
of the
itself.
herb. Okay.
Yes.
And real quick, I want to go to your skull cap because a long time ago, you had me on that because I was in a court thing, and I was stressed out, and you had me on the skull cap. That was my saving grace through that court thing.
People that need skull cap because of anxiety, whether it is something temporary like what yours was, or whether it's something that they fight with on an everyday basis throughout their life. I have never had anybody come back and say it doesn't work.
Wow. Wow.
It's and you know, of the capsules that I sell, because I have that in herb form, but I also have it in capsules. I would say that is probably that and turmeric are the two major capsules that I sell.
Let me ask you
Okay.
about, you just mentioned turmeric. So let me ask you, I've noticed some people that are on it for pain or whatever, start to have a smell. Why is that?
I would tell you that I have not noticed that. But like any herb, I mean, like if you eat garlic every day, you're going to start smelling like garlic. Turmeric is one of the main ingredients in curry. And curry has a very definite smell. And it is, and consequently, your body's going to absorb so much of it, and then it's going to have to detox a little bit. Back when I was a kid, so we're talking in the 60s, somebody decided drinking carrot juice was the way to go. And so it became the in thing to do is to drink carrot juice. And they were drinking so much of it that they actually turned orange.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I read about that.
It is.
Absolutely.
And there's a gentleman in, I think he's gone now. I think he died. But he was from Oregon, and he was drinking colloidal silver. Colloidal silver is silver ionized water. And he was making his own, so I would assume it was stronger than what would be commercially available. He turned deep blue. I mean, not a blue cast. This guy was like this color blue. And so anything that you put in your mouth is going to affect your body. It's, it's just that simple. And it is, and so you need to monitor, what you're taking. So turmeric itself is an anti-inflammatory. So it works amazing for people who have arthritis, because it takes that's what arthritis is inflammation of the joints. And it is, you have to take it, again, it doesn't affect anything else, but there are things you have to do. Turmeric is fat soluble, so you need to take it with your foods. You need to take it with a little bit of pepper because the pepper activates the turmeric. And so if you're taking it with pepper and you're taking it with food, you can take less. Now, what I typically do is, depending upon the level of pain, I tell people that they need to load in the beginning, because you have to have enough in there to get a hold of that inflammation and send it away. So I have people for 2 weeks taking 6 capsules, 3 in the morning and 3 at night. And after those 2 weeks, I have them reduce 1 capsule a week. So week 3, you'd take 2 in the morning and 3 at night. Week 4, you'd take 2 and 2. And you keep reducing it until such time as you wake up one morning saying, I feel creaky again. And then when you start feeling creaky, then you go back up 1, and that's your maintenance dose. For me, if I'm taking it regularly, I can take it 1 every other day.
Nice.
Because it's just
And
like in your system.
Yeah, I guess your system is, the inflammation is under control. Now, if you do something and you, which I do every now and again, and so I've got arthritis in my knee. I had knee surgery 20 years ago, and they took out all of my meniscus. So that knee is vulnerable, and it is. And sometimes I'll step wrong off a curb or something, and it'll wrench the knee, and then the pain starts again. And then I have to take a little bit more turmeric until it gets under control, and then go back down again.
Gotcha.
But again, anything that anybody puts in their mouth, it affects their body. Some nourish the body, but even good food, if you eat too much of it, affects your body.
Right. Right.
So
and
that's one of
food
the
with chemicals and crazy stuff in it that we put in our mouth and we don't think about or don't realize. I've noticed a lot of new ingredients on like just gums and all the stuff that are added to regular things that wasn't in there previously. And so stuff like that, we really got to pay attention to, because we don't know how they affect us.
Well, and that's really true. For me, I've been doing some videos on slow living, and slow living is intentional living.
Okay.
And so one of the things that we did was I did one on food, and I was saying, not everybody is a gardener, and I get that. And some people don't have the ability to garden because they're living in an apartment without, a little yard. But simply reading the labels on the canned foods that you buy or the prepared foods that you buy, I have been using the same mayonnaise my entire life. That's what my mom bought. It's the one I like. So I've been eating that. Well, I happened to turn it over and look at the label, and I saw that it was using GMO modified food products in it. And it was like, well, okay, I'm not buying this one anymore.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of the GMOs that you cannot get away from. I mean, flour. They don't sell any non-modified flour. And consequently, the ones that I can avoid, I do. The ones that I can't avoid, I am not going to give up bread. It's just, or pasta. I mean, I'm a carboholic, and I recognize that. But it is, it's pick your battles.
Exactly. And it's just something to keep in mind as we move forward, because I took a peek at the back of some labels too, just like cream cheese. I could only find one brand that didn't have guar gum or citric acid, all the stuff in it. And I was like, it used to just be like milk, cream, enzymes or something. But so many of the products have these added additives, I guess. And just for convenience, I don't know, but we don't have the long-term effects of them. And like you said, everything that goes in does something, and everything we put on our skin does something. And so just good to pay attention to little stuff like that.
True.
I think you would be really surprised at the difference how you would feel. I had a lady, I just wrote about ranch dressing and what all was in ranch dressing. Yeah. And then I put out a recipe for making your own ranch dressing that was just basically buttermilk, sour cream, mayonnaise, and then a list of herbs.
Yeah.
And a lady wrote back to me and said that she had started thinking that perhaps things that her son was eating was causing the ADHD that he was having trouble with. And one that she mentioned was red dye number 40.
Absolutely.
And And that's another thing that I find a bit amusing, that the food has to have a beautiful color. I'm good with white. It is, or yellow, or green. Mine doesn't have to be.
Mhm.
I don't like the dyes in the food.
Right.
And it is, but she had said with the things that they were doing and cutting out of their diet, that he has almost no more symptoms of ADHD.
That's
His
incredible.
attention is all under control. And she said, thank you for putting this recipe. She says, because that was the next thing that we were going to do, was look at the ranch dressing.
Yep.
And so I made it easier for her. And it is, but these things, it's kind of like the frog in the boiling water.
Mm-hmm.
If you put him in the cold water and turn the heat up, he doesn't realize he's boiling to death, because it's a slow thing. And if you look at how you feel now, and you don't necessarily think that you feel worse because of what you're eating, or because of what you're, if you're being sedentary or all of these other things. This is how it feels to be 68. And it is, but that's not true. By monitoring what you're putting in your mouth, and that's big pharma as well as, as food, you can make yourself feel so much better.
Yeah.
Okay.
By paying attention. It's like we've been on autopilot for a long time. Not everybody, but a lot of us have. Just like, we're busy. You go get something, you throw it in a pan, you cook it, you eat it.
Mhm.
You don't realize about the natural remedies available to you. And it's like, as corny as this sounds, we got to take the wheel back and start looking at where we're going and start driving our own life and not be on autopilot, because it's hurting us.
Well, I think some of this goes into how you feel about yourself. I used, when I had my kids at home, I made everything from scratch. I mean, my kids didn't have store-bought bread at home until they were in middle school.
Wow.
I baked bread every 2 or 3 times a week.
Mhm.
And so all homemade jam and jelly and everything was totally made from scratch.
Yeah.
And so that meant I canned, and froze and dehydrated fruits and vegetables and stuff like that. And then my kids got older and moved out, and I became single again, and I lived by myself. And I sat there and thought, that's too much work. Why am I doing that when I can go to Winco and get a kilo of vegetables for 58 cents? And so I got into this thing where I was not worth that effort.
Yeah.
2 years ago, my youngest daughter says, okay, Mom, it's time that I learn how to can. And so I said, okay. And she came over and we started canning together. And now we can separately because we both are, relatively busy people. And what I realized is I like canning. It was a lot of fun, and why did I stop? And then the taste difference.
Yeah.
I'm canning a little bit differently now. Now I'm canning meals. So instead of just vegetables and fruits, I'm canning soup and chili and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it is, but even tomatoes, because I love tomatoes and I cook a lot with tomatoes. And the difference between the commercially canned tomatoes and the home canned tomatoes are totally different. And it's like, why did you ever give up the taste? I mean, not only doing what you enjoy, but the taste. And it is, and I think, but it's what, like you said, you get into this autopilot thing because I was working in corporate America, and I was traveling all over the world in my job, and I didn't have the time to continue that practice. And I think where we really need to look is what we like doing. And are we doing what we like, or are we doing what we think we need to?
Yeah.
And it is, I loved that job until I didn't. And I mean, it got so crazy at that job. I had a horse, and I had it boarded across the street at the farm across the street. And I was in there. I would take care of the horse when I was home, and the barn owner would take care of the horse if I wasn't home. And she came into the barn one day, and I was there mucking out the stall. And she said to me, "Oh, you're home?" And I said, "Yeah." And I says, "Yeah, I'm going to be home for a long time." I says, "I think you'll probably get tired of seeing me." And she says, "Well, when are you leaving again?" And I told her the date, and she looked at me and she said, "Lynn, that's 2 weeks." And I will never forget that. It was just like, oh my God, that was kind of the beginning of the end. It was, I need to be home. Mm-hmm. And it is, and it wasn't much longer after that that I quit. And I still had to work, so I got another job. But at this point, it was like, okay, I'll take this job because it's only domestic travel, so it's not as far away and it's not as frequent. And now I don't travel at all. But it was taking somebody telling me, somebody on the outside of my life telling me what it looked like. For 2 weeks, I was going to be home forever. It was, that was, we need to be more mindful at what it is that we're doing and how we're liking it. Because, you know what, I tell you that when I stopped that job, my anxiety level plummeted.
Wow.
Because I wasn't always running to catch an airplane to go someplace that I didn't necessarily want to go.
Yeah.
And it is, sitting down and taking a breath is a good start. And I think that with the herbs, tying this back to where we started, is the herbs will work slower than big pharma, but they will work with much less side effects. And because they were created for our use. And so our body is created to work well with the strength of the herbs, unless of course you happen to be allergic to it. But it is, it's all with slowing down and taking your time a little bit.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It is, so other herbs for anxiety are lemon balm, lavender, chamomile. It is, rose is a mood elevator. So if you're just sad, making a tea with like rose and orange peels will give you a little bit of a lift.
Yeah.
It is, there's so many herbs, and depending upon where it is that you are living and what grows around there, everybody has a different idea of which herb to take. I think most folks have about 20 or 30, most folks that use herbs on a regular basis have probably between 10 and 20 herbs that they use for pretty much everything. It is, I have a lot of herbs at my house as well as here in the shop because I don't like to be out. Once I get home, I'm home, for the night. And so I don't go home and then go someplace else. So if I all of a sudden start a cold or something, I don't want to have to get back in the car, come to the shop and get herbs. So I just keep those stock of herbs for when I need them already at my house. It is, I only live like a half a mile from the shop, so it's not like I have to go drive forever. But
you can go shopping at your own place.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's pretty funny. I mean, at one point in time, I did live far away. I lived about 30 minutes away from where I worked. And it was up a mountain road. And so that was the case. That's when I started. Nope, when I'm home, I'm home. And if you need something at the grocery store, you should have called me before. and then that becomes habit. So that's where that came from.
Gotcha.
But it is,
Lynn.
I'm slowing down a lot. And I mean, and it's intentional slowing down because I don't need to race so that I don't enjoy life anymore.
Yeah.
Right.
You were just even talking about getting on an airplane to go somewhere you didn't want to go. You just saying that like gave me anxiety. It's so like, whoo, I'm glad you don't do that anymore.
Yeah, it was crazy. I had to go to Singapore for a meeting that I was hosting the meeting, and so I had to go out there the first time to set everything up. And then when you have a program such as the one that I was putting, which was a huge trade show, you have to do a pre-conference with it. And I was at a conference center, so this made no sense to me. They called me and they said, when are you coming back for the pre-con? We would like you to be here 2 weeks before the meeting.
Oh my God.
And I said to them, you want me to come all the way to Singapore for a 2-hour meeting? I says, yeah, no, that's not happening.
Maybe they didn't have Zoom.
I said, we can do it over the phone. No. And they actually called my boss and said, we need to have her come and do this. And I sat him down and told him, there's no way I'm going on a 25-hour flight one way for a 2-hour meeting. I says, we can do it. I'll go in a couple of days early, and then I'll just stay there and do the meeting. But that makes no sense.
Yeah.
And it is, so sometimes expectations of other people put us in positions that are untenable. And that was one of them. And I stuck to my guns and I said, no, I'm not going to do that. That makes no sense whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
And I still, to this day, it's like, what were they thinking?
Yeah. And I know there's a lot of people, I mean, that get used and abused at work that are nice, hardworking, giving people. And it's like finding those limits and boundaries, even in a work situation where you kind of feel like you have to do it. It's really important to find those boundaries.
I see a lot of people in here because of that.
Mm-hmm.
It is work-life balance is very important. And especially with the technology that we have, the telephone that is in my purse every minute of the day. Yeah. And it is, I mean, when I was a kid, we didn't even have answering machines. It was a crapshoot. You would, dial somebody's phone number and maybe they were home and maybe they'd pick up and you got to talk to them. And if you didn't, well, then you'd call them back later.
Yeah.
Yep.
Different times. Terry, I feel like you wanted to say something.
Well, I was going to tell her ask about, besides maybe a couple of things for the cold seasons that we're going into, but I want to back up to the St. John's Wort. At one time I took this and I realized that at a certain point it wasn't working for me anymore. I personally have, I get immune to things and then they stop working. What is your suggestion for that?
If it's not working for you, then I would quit taking it. There are other antidepressants out there. Just like I said, lemon balm is an antidepressant as well. I would try something different. But I would also look at what is creating the depression. Is that something that you can affect? Right. It is, if you're in a job you hate, well then quit the job. Do something different. I have a story about a young woman and her mother who came in to the shop. And she was like in her early 20s. And she had just gotten a job at McDonald's. And she had told them when she got the job that she did not want to work the overnight shift.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the majority of people that were working at McDonald's at that time were high school students. And it's against the law to have a high school student past 10 o'clock. And so they didn't have somebody else. And so they kept giving her those hours. So she went out and looking for syrup of Ipecac, which apparently they don't sell anymore.
What?
Ipecac
Yeah.
makes you throw up, right?
Yes. Yeah. It was something that you put in your cupboard in the event one of your children took something put something in their mouth that they shouldn't have, poison. And it is, but you would, the protocol was you were supposed to call the poison control center, tell them this is what happened. And then they would tell you what to do, either induce vomiting or drink milk or, whatever like that. And her big plan was, she was going to buy the syrup of Ipecac, go to work. And when it got to be 10 o'clock, she was going to take the syrup of Ipecac and throw up, and they would send her home. And I'm sitting here looking at her, and it was so funny because I don't always censor my words well. And her mother was standing behind her, and I was standing in front of her. And I looked at her and I said, "That is the most stupid thing I have ever heard in my entire life." And I said, "I'm 60 years old. I've heard a lot of stupid." And Mom was behind her going, "Yes." And I said, "Why would you do that?" I said, "You're going to ruin your teeth because every time you throw up, the stomach acid eats up the enamel on your teeth. It's going to do the same thing in your esophagus." I said, "You're going to be doing some real physical damage to your body." I said, "It's a minimum wage job." I said, "Go to the mall. They're hiring and they close at 10, so they can't work you overnight." And I mean, so it was a real simple fix for her.
Right.
This was, she was hating the job. She was getting depressed. Okay, change jobs.
Yeah.
So, look at the behavior that is causing the depression. Now, sometimes it's not something you can handle. I mean, that you can handle independently. It is, and sometimes it's temporary, like the court situation that you had.
Well, that's when I was taking the St. John's Wort was prior because I thought it was depressing me, but then then it wasn't working. And I felt like, well, this isn't working. So I guess that's my body saying this isn't what you needed. But then the skull cap just went, shh. I was able to sit there and not feel like I was coming out of my skin, watching everything go down. So that makes perfect sense because it was so 10 years ago.
And that's the thing that we've stopped doing is listening to our bodies.
Right.
And then oftentimes we'll go to a doctor and they don't listen to us. They just decide, well, this is what the situation is. And so here's the medicine. And it isn't necessarily what is the root cause of the illness.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. So
now,
power
real
of
quick,
awareness and paying attention.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, Terry. Continue.
I'm sorry. I was going to go right back to my other question or my other little statement was about the client that came in about the red dyes that before I knew I was a medium, I've always been a hairdresser. I had a client that was always talking about a child who had autism and ADHD, and not knowing then I had said, I think there's a wheat issue and I think there's a color issue. Not knowing then when I said this, God, it was so long ago, but they removed the wheat first. And then they looked for things of dark colors. But now knowing it was red dye, when the wheat was removed, it takes 30 days to get out of your system. So then if you cheat, you can say, oh, I'm going to have a pizza this week or today. It's back in your system. You got to get it back out. But the wheat started making the child say more words than they had. So there's a lot of things about what we put in our bodies are altering, just like the red dye. I've lived that world, so I just wanted to put that out there in case your friend is listening or your new clients listening. I've gone down that road, really a long, deep hole with that one. I like it. I liked what comes out of it to see. But everybody's different. Everybody's different.
Well, I think the thing is, flour and wheat has been a staple in our diet forever. I think what changed, because now I have, I will, in October, I will have a new daughter-in-law, and she has celiac. And it is, so we're looking at how to change our diet for when they come to visit and, and have dinner. And we had a spontaneous dinner. They were living in California. They came up in the midst of COVID. And at the time that they came up, you could only have 5 people in a restaurant. And so we were, it was just going to be them and me, because the other kids had plans. Well, somehow everybody's plans got canceled, and about 4 hours before we were going to go have dinner, they all called and says, okay, we're coming. And what? And then that's when I found out she had celiac. And it was because I was okay, we'll have spaghetti because I can make that fast. And I called my son and I said, okay, do we have diet issues? And he says, oh yeah, she has celiac. And it was like, well, there was the spaghetti. I think what has caused this great amount of wheat allergies is the GMO. It's how they modified it to make it stronger and grow faster and do all of these other different things. That's the modification, I think, that we don't necessarily realize, and will feel bad and not recognize the reason for it. I don't know. It is goes back to reading labels.
Yep.
I saw a cartoon a long time ago. It was an op-ed thing, and it had a restaurant picture there. This is when you could smoke in restaurants, and they were making the big push to not be able to do that. And what they did was they had 3 booths, and the 2 outside booths had smokers in it. And then they had the center booth that was the non-smoking booth. And there was like a glass partition or something, so the smoke wouldn't go there. And it was like, there's no such thing as a non-smoking restaurant, because it's still going to, filter, even if you're in the non-smoking section. Yeah. And the thing is that it's the same way with pesticides. Generally, if you've got a farm someplace, your neighbors are farmers too. And depending on the kind of pesticide that's being used, if it's something that's put directly on the ground or if it's sprayed, the wind is going to carry it away to the other farmers. Now, the other farms may not have it the same amount, but it's still there. And if you look at the bees or whatever other pollinators are being used, if they're pollinating the stuff with the pesticides and then they go and cross over the border to the next farm, the bee is taking some of that with them as well. Yeah. So
wow. I like listening to people's different opinions and of things, because I honestly would not have thought of that. And it's common sense, but you wouldn't have thought. You just think that I'm doing the best that I can to do this garden, but you're right, all that stuff would happen. That's crazy. That's an eye-opener.
It is. It's, again, it then becomes, do you want a whole lot of bad or a little bad?
Right. Right.
That's right.
It is. So, I mean, yeah, you need to kind of look at those things. But then the other part to that is too, with the cost of groceries being what they are right now,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, it's like, okay, I've got this many dollars, and so I cannot buy organic
Mm-hmm.
because then I would only have one meal a day. And whereas maybe I could do that, I'm not going to do that to my children.
Yeah, totally.
And it is, so it has definitely become a choose your battles kind of thing. Yeah, it would be wonderful if everybody would go organic, and then there would be just one price. But
a healthy price, not a gouging price.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's time to start wrapping up. So, Lynn, could you tell our viewers where to find you and what you have and a little bit about the shop?
Oh, wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I am in Everett in downtown. I am on the corner of Oaks and Hewitt. I'm straight across the street from the will call window of the Angel of the Winds.
Mm.
I have over 450 herbs that are medicinal herbs, magical herbs, and cooking herbs. They are all certified non-organic, or they're wildcrafted. So we're talking about the organic, it is, I still work with that. It is, we have tea, we have essential oils, we've got magical things. I have a Facebook page that tells about events that we're doing. And right now we're talking on the posts about oils and herbs and what they can do for you. It is, so that's where I am and what I'm doing.
Awesome. And then do you have a podcast as well? Do you do that?
I do. I do it on YouTube.
Okay.
And I also have the videos. I stream live on Facebook Live, and then I take that recording and actually have somebody do it for me. Take the recording and put it on a YouTube channel. That is, they're both under the name Moddejonge's Herbals.
Perfect. I'll put that there so everybody can find you.
Thank you.
So this has been so awesome. I just love all the information.
Good. Well, thank you. I hope it was what you were looking for.
Absolutely.
Sure. You're very knowledgeable. I'm like, you're a wise woman.
Yeah.
That's what I have on my business card. Wise woman.
Did you? I didn't even know that.
It is, that's an old world name for an herbalist.
Oh, look at me go.
All right, cool. Well, let's all say goodbye.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
You're so welcome.
You're welcome. Thank you for giving us your time. From my heart to yours, I love you.
Mwah.